Welcome to Ctrl-Alt+Read. We're here, episode 2. Quick recap. Last time we covered a book called Flow. Definitely check it out if you're looking for something to read. But this month, we're moving on to Kristen Hadeed's Permission to Screw Up, which is lessons learned from creating a startup company from basically nothing. She started it because she wanted a pair of jeans.
She wanted a pair of jeans that were $99.
Yep. So we took the month to read that. It was a great read. It is very topical, considering this whole venture here with Flyover is a startup that was just born out of an idea to do something goofy. Not quite a pair of jeans, but still there was a lot of lessons learned here. Overall, it was a really fun book. I thought it was good. At least the first half in this, I'm not criticizing Kristen at all for this, but the second half of the book I thought was a little kind of like the publisher made her finish the book because the real lessons learned were the startup stuff. That's my take, and that's my quick take on the book. What do you guys think?
I felt like that too. I think it was a roller coaster book. There was, oh, that's interesting. Oh, okay, move on, that type stuff. But what I thought was really interesting was, she's a millennial, and she hired millennials, even Gen Z, I think, didn't she talk about some Gen Z stuff? And we work with them in our classroom, so I thought it was really interesting, some of the things that she ran into, a lot of times we've run into in the classroom, and she had a really good perspective about how to deal with them. Of course, it's really cheerleader and kind of, she had troubles where she, couldn't let go of that person that kept messing up. But it was interesting to listen to her story from, start to finish about how she built this by just going out for a pair of jeans and deciding I got to get some money.
Right.
And then, never meant it to be this huge business. And it turned into that. And all of her speaking and consulting type stuff too.
Yeah, I think it turned out to be maybe the best decision of her life was to want those pair of jeans and then to just randomly start this business.
Right.
And then from my perspective, having tried to start multiple businesses in the past, and that's going back before moving out here to Nebraska, I tried 2 startups, failed miserably. Then moving out here, we started the wife's business, and then another side gig, which never really got off the ground. COVID took out the wife's business over.
And that's such a shame.
Overall.
So delicious.
It was a good food. But from my perspective, not only agreeing with the millennial, but also because I'm HR and business and management and supervision, like you say, the first half of the book, I could just run away with topics of discussion.
Right.
There's a lot of stuff that, great advice, great observations, good points on failure, good suggestions for those who are going to start their own business in the future.
Yes.
So it's definitely, I think, for the shall we say, the millennial or Gen Z audience who are thinking about starting their own gig, it would be a good read. And even for the older folk who might be trying to start a business, just a good reminder.
Yep.
That it's okay to fail, because failure, we go back to Apollo 13. Failure is not an option. Well, under those circumstances, yes. But in terms of getting started, you don't want to sit there and say, I'm never going to fail, or if I fail, I'm just going to give up.
Right.
That's not how great companies are formed. This as an example.
The perseverance that she had, because a lot of people would have just packed it in at certain points, but I think that's kind of a testament to the lessons that, at least early on when she talked about it, the way that her dad taught her lessons was like, no, I'm not bailing you out. You need to figure this out. I understand you're in a bind. I completely appreciate that. But you're only going to be stronger if you get yourself out of that hole. And so I think that probably is what drove her quite a bit to being okay with screwing up, is because she had been told her whole life that it's okay and you just need to learn from that experience and move on. It was great advice for a startup. It's really quote unquote timeless. Every generation needs that person in their generation to tell them to get off their ass. And because the generation before you or the 2 generations before you can sit there and gripe and grump at you all they want, and tell you the exact same thing that person in your generation is going to tell you, but they're not going to listen because it's like, blah, 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 I'm not going to listen to you old fogies kind of thing. And then you've got somebody from your generation, which is what Kristen did, and sounds like she got through to a lot of people because this was recommended to you by a student, wasn't it, Brian?
Yes.
Yeah. And so you've got the next generation coming up paying attention to this book, whereas if it was, I don't know how much, because is it Dale Carnegie who wrote the How to Make Friends and Influence People? That one is not necessarily forgotten. It's still a popular title, but that was somebody from their generation telling them how to work in this new world. And that's what Kristen is doing with her generation, is saying, hey, we can do this. Let's do it. And these are the lessons that I learned, and it was a lot of fun. I thought it was chock full of good advice, especially since I'm trying to do a startup.
Yeah. And to your point, you learn more from your peers than you do, like you say, listening to someone else who isn't your peer.
Right. Yep.
It's just like students are probably going to learn more from fellow students than they will necessarily listening to professors because they speak the same language or they don't feel as pressured or intimidated.
Yeah, absolutely.
I thought it was remarkable how she kind of fell into it, but then she forced herself to learn about it. So she had this entrepreneurial type, what do they call that? That was the first place she had her business.
The incubator?
The incubator, yeah. So she had that incubator, and they had meetings, and she listened.
Yeah.
And she networked, and she, she may have not have done all that they said of her, like the HR gal. You mean you don't have an employee handbook?
Right.
But she's just like, yeah, we're okay. But then in the end realized, maybe I need an employee handbook.
Right.
So I think, and we all learned that way growing up. We talk about walking backwards in the snow up a hill, when we had to come home and our life was so tough.
Right.
But it was just mainly the fact that we had to make mistakes in order to learn what to do next and how to move forward. And she did that naturally as she progressed with this business. So
yeah,
I thought that was interesting.
Yeah, exactly. Everything seemed to just kind of go her way when I mean, things were bad. I mean, there were some things that didn't work out, and she was in some bad circumstances. But for the most part, things kind of fell into place and worked out. And because the story of the 45 was a great story, and it maybe, I guess I don't know if she would think this, but that was kind of the biggest lesson to learn is you need to be in there with your people. You're not there to be a lord. You're there to be down in the trenches with them. And then once that was learned, I think the rest of her business kind of falls into place. I mean, there were stumblings that happened, but I mean, learning how to treat people like people is the number one lesson. And to your point, in the classroom, I totally encourage them to get up and help each other, because you're right. They don't want to hear me come over and tell them 1,000 times, or maybe they're intimidated to raise their hand, whereas a peer will be able to help them figure this out. And I'm totally for it. I'm like, we are not in a vacuum, people. We are in a networking class. Get up and talk. Help each other.
I mean, when we think about, let's think, for us, tech, but IBM, they built their company off structure, I had a friend that worked for IBM. She was a systems analyst. They had to be in blue suits, white shirts, dressed up every day, this is our structure. And, it was nice to read about this generation's, the way they think about business, and how she formed this business with more empathy and compassion,
right,
and wanting her employees to be leaders themselves.
Right, yeah. That's huge. Training leaders is really what your business should be. I mean, whatever the product is, you want to be training your people or teaching them how to be good leaders. At the very least, how to follow appropriately. I thought you were going to go in a different direction there, where you've got IBM, who they're all structured and they're in their blue business suits. And they're there from 8 to 5 or 8 to midnight, I guess. But they're there at 8 o'clock in the morning and they have 1 hour lunch and stuff like that. And then you pivot, and then you've got Apple, which was completely unstructured. It was Jobs and Wozniak in a garage, just putting pieces together, and very unstructured. I think you can't argue either way was better, given where they are in the current hierarchy of tech. Apple obviously is the leader, but you can't say that it was their informal structure that did that, because you've got IBM and Microsoft, who are not very far behind, and they are very structured. So, but yeah, I like the empathy, the unstructured. That's kind of the approach with this. Is there's not really a whole lot of structure to building this. At least the studio side. The IT side is starting to get a little bit more structured, but the studio side of Flyover is very, let's just try something and see what happens, and then we'll learn from our mistakes. That was kind of the point when I set out on this, is lifelong learning. What you got, Brian?
Oh, I don't know. What topic do you want to...
I don't know. You had a look on your face.
Yeah.
Oh, I always have looks on my face, and sometimes they're not the best, most appropriate looks to necessarily have here. But going back to the discussions before, because just something came to mind while you were speaking, with regards to the upbringing. We talk a lot about helicopter parents. We talk a lot about, they call them lawnmower parents.
Oh, I haven't heard that one.
Lawnmower parents are those that blaze the trail in front of their kids.
Oh, interesting.
They're the ones that go into the interviews and do the stuff for their
Gotcha.
kids. And, at least that's why I call them lawnmower. I think there's a different terminology for them.
Yeah.
But again, like we're already talking about, allowing your people to make those mistakes, provide them the necessary training.
Yeah.
To make those mistakes.
Yep.
And it sounds, in this book, training was hit or miss. I mean, yes, you did have some training involved, but from looking at it from an HR perspective, it wasn't the best training programs, I can tell you that. But it's still the fact that you bring your people in, you trust your people, you train your people, and you let them do their thing.
Yeah.
Because you don't hire someone and then watch over them.
Right.
Let them do their thing, give them the autonomy to do their job. You have a pretty successful employee if all the stars line up.
Yeah. And once she realized that they're going to survive, she doesn't need to put out all the fires, then that was good. And her cleaners or her employees started to actually make relationships with the customers, and it went beyond just the typical cleaning and cleaning of the house, because I think she said there were customers that trusted them to walk their dogs, watch their kids. I mean,
watch the house.
Yeah, watch the house. I mean, they created and forged relationships, and that, I think, speaks directly to how Kristen decided to lead her company and turn them into leaders. So.
And toward the end of the book, there was one individual, one client that they had who was passing away. She had asked for the girl that cleaned the house to be there, and the cleaner couldn't make it, and she was crushed because of that strong relationship that gets built.
Right.
And there's the other thing with regard to growing a business, is that it is relationship based. You can't just walk in and, here's your contract. There we go. It takes multiple interviews to build that relationship. And looking from an international perspective, seeing as how my wife's Peruvian, you go to South America, you just don't walk in and expect to close a deal.
Okay.
You have to, it's going to take you some time. You're going to have to know the family. You're going to have to bring gifts. You're going to have to really sit down and get the full picture before you are welcomed into the circle.
Wow, yeah.
The United States is pretty much business, close the deal mentality.
Right.
Other cultures, not so much.
Right.
You really have to work that relationship.
Yeah, that makes sense. And I like that you said that it's customer relationships, and that's why the systems are called CRMs, customer relationship management software, not customer management software. There's the relationship piece in there that hopefully is reminding people that these are relationships that you're developing with these people. They're not just numbers in your database and in your ledgers. Because yeah, you need to cultivate those. And I don't know if that was an expectation when she set out to do this, that she was going to, that her staff was going to start developing relationships with their clients.
Well, it kind of seemed like it undulated too. Like, they're on the right track, and then, time passes and the people didn't go to the commons room, and she was speaking a lot more, so she wasn't right there a lot.
Yeah.
And then something hit. I can't remember what hit, and then she realized, wait a minute, we need to come back to that. So then in her new building, she didn't even create an office space. She wanted to be in the commons area, to be with the student workers. That's wonderful, because that's part of growth of a company. And a lot of times you see companies, they were startups, and they had, just take Wozniak. He loved what he did. He created the first computer. He was a genius. And then as the business started to grow, he pulled himself away because he didn't like that aspect of it. But Jobs did. He was like all about PR, marketing, and all that kind of stuff. So companies tend to grow and all of a sudden shoot, and they're huge, and the CEO is just up in the Princess Tower, but she realized that each time and kind of came back down.
Right. Yeah. Exactly. Because it was when she was relinquishing more of the control over to Abby and Aaron, and they didn't have the same rah-rah mentality that she did. And so that's when things started to fade. And then she could only be trusted to hire people. And so she had to trust them with the cheerleading part so that she could do her speaking engagements, or I don't know if the speaking engagements had started quite yet.
Maybe not.
Right, but she was trying to get all of these people hired, and because they were growing so rapidly, and she didn't trust anybody else to hire. So what it boiled down to is a bunch of lessons in trust is kind of what it seemed like. It was, I need to find the people that I can trust, who have the same mentality, the same goals as me, or the same values as me, and they can recognize these things in other people. And she had to relinquish control somewhere. And so I think it was the hiring is what she relinquished to Aaron and Abby. And let them do the hiring, and then she went back to more of the cheerleading and stuff like that. And so, yeah, it seemed like a bunch of lessons in learning how to trust people, relinquishing control, because so many people just don't know how to relinquish that control.
Well, speaking on that, relinquishing control, what do you guys think about, what if this were your daughter? And you saw this happening? How would you react from start to finish?
That is a great question. I don't know how I would. I think I would like to think that I would have a similar mindset to Dad, where I'm like, all right, this is what happened. You need to figure it out. But then I also like the fact that Mom eventually came and worked for her. And so, I mean, if I had the time, I'd like to be able to do that.
I raised boys.
Me too.
So I am known as the father of no. And so I said no a lot, and
you said no a lot.
I said no a lot, and my wife had to remind me that you gotta let them at least try. I will say when they were very young, I was probably what you considered an overprotective parent, not to the point of bubble wrap, but enough to where I was always 2 or 3 steps ahead.
Yeah.
And if they were wanting to try something new, Dad was hesitant, and Mom would kick me in the shin and say, "Let them go." Now that they're both more independent, they're now almost 20, one's 20-something and the other one's soon to be 20-something. I have to remind myself that they're on their own.
Yeah.
There's nothing I can do at this point. And so it is tough to, like you say, to start to trust
Mm-hmm.
and to let them go, make their mistakes. You put so much work protecting them all these years, and then all of a sudden they're no longer around.
Right.
So it can be a challenge for some. Guilty as charged, but I'm also learning too as I hit the next stage.
Right. My kids haven't left the house yet. We still have a couple of years before our oldest is out, and so it's a tough question. I don't know how I'm gonna react when they finally get out into the world. I hope we have them prepared to make the right decisions, think through things objectively, and
Well, and that's what, that's, as I was listening to this, I thought about, the kind of mother I was before he left the house and the mother I tried to become after he left. And now, self-sufficient and married and, you're different. You're a different parent. I mean, back then, I think he said to me one time, we were coming home from my family in western Nebraska, and I can't remember if I probably did. I was like, what did you think of me as a mother? Said something like that. And, he's like, and he said, I wish you'd have been tougher on me, which I thought was interesting. But
I think you've told me that before.
I probably was. We laughed a lot, and when he made mistakes, I tend to just shrug. Well, that was a learning moment type.
Yeah.
Thing. But as he's, and so I try not to inject anything into, if he would have said, I'm going to leave my finance job and I'm going to start a business of my own, I'd be, okay.
Right.
But that's what, that's why she just kind of almost fell into this.
Yeah.
Because if she would have been on Wall Street or whatever and then had to come back, would she have made the same decision to start this company or not?
It's a good
so
question.
Sometimes it's about a time in your life when it just fit. I mean, I think I was telling you that as she was talking about growing up, I did the same things. I had little businesses, I had fireworks stands, I had my own Parkview newsletter that I published and sold for 10 cents. We all did, but I would probably have a hard time stepping in. I like stability, you know, and that is just, you step into a business, both of you. You've done that. I would find it hard to do that. Just say, okay, I'm going to try this. But that's good. That's I wish I had that trait.
Well, I have a safety net. I'm not putting everything on the line for this. And so this is more or less just having fun. And so I have no safety net here. So I mean I have a safety net, so I can't say I'm necessarily taking much of a risk with this business, but
well, that'd be more like when I would be like, I have to have that safety net. So now would be like, oh yeah, I could probably do something. Just try it. That was the interesting part to me. As I thought, as I was listening to this young gal talk, I just thought, as a parent, how would I have handled a lot of this? And, I know, there were things and challenges in my son's life, and you just want to be right there for him to pick up the pieces. So I thought I really admired that dad for saying, and especially as a lawyer, to me that would be hard as a lawyer. They're all about like my dad was an insurance agent, and I loved riding my motorcycle. Well, he wouldn't let me give rides because, oh my gosh, no. If that person got hurt, we could be sued, So that's interesting that her lawyer father could see probably you're going to get sued. I told you to do this. Well, step away.
And he did give warnings.
Yeah, he did.
There's the trademarks and way back when they got the name of the company.
Yep.
And so, again, here's my suggestion. Take it or leave it. Yeah. Learn from the mistake.
Exactly. And so I wonder if permission to screw up came from the lessons from her dad. Does she actually ever say that?
I don't remember
Not
ever.
that I know of.
Because that's kind of what...
It was kind of implied.
Yeah.
And here's the thing, though. If you try to make everything perfect, you're going to drive yourself insane.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I have to remind myself of that every day. You made a mistake, learn from it, and then let it go. because otherwise, if you keep reliving the mistake over and over and over again, guilty as charged, it'll drive you insane.
Yeah, absolutely. That quest for perfection is just going to drive you insane no matter what. I mean, I see that in students that if they don't get 100, if they don't get a perfect score on whatever they're working on, it's the end of the world. I'm like, whoa, I don't know where this lesson came from, where the expectation is perfection, but that
seems to be the American way sometimes.
And I don't understand that.
I
I don't know where that came from.
That'd be an interesting research,
right?
To see where that all.
I wonder if that came from trying to compete with how perfect, in quotes, perfect Japanese businesses are.
For a Japanese company, it's demanding.
Yeah, I imagine.
It's demanding.
So did you HR for
Yes.
Yeah? Oh wow.
Yeah.
I bet that would be intense.
It was a learning experience, and sticking on the topic of this book, made a lot of mistakes.
Yeah.
Especially when it came to the differences in culture.
Yeah.
In terms of business.
Yep.
With how to hand a business card.
Really?
How to greet someone. There are a lot of rules, and now I have a book, Kiss, Bow, and Shake Hands, which goes through many of the cultures. If you are ever going to do business with any of these cultures, these are the rules.
Yeah.
And I learned very quickly, read that book very quickly. So this week, because I offended the CEO at one point.
Really?
And he gave me a very stern look. And then it was explained to me afterward, never made that mistake again.
Wow.
So yes, I loved working there every minute. There are a lot of things about the way the Japanese do business. Wow.
Yeah.
Definitely learning experience. Definitely a good time.
Nice. Right on. And it goes, back to your point about Peru. Doing business in Peru is a completely different culture than doing business in Japan, which is a completely different culture than doing business in America or England or France or Australia. It's a good thing to just know different cultures anyway. But yeah, if you want to do business there, you better damn well respect those people.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, the whole conversation's wrapped around vulnerability and being vulnerable, and that's how you create those relationships with people. Being a leader means being vulnerable and sharing things and showing people that you're human as well.
But we don't do that a lot in this country.
No.
We don't want to show vulnerability.
No, we don't.
We have to lock up, throw away the key.
Yeah.
Do not show vulnerability because that's seen as a sign of weakness.
Right, exactly.
Well, and that's that she kind of summarizes that nicely in chapter 7 when she started writing this book. She didn't have all these failures in there, because she didn't really want to talk about those things.
Right.
She wanted to talk about how she created this successful business, starting with this pair of jeans. And I forget the author that she talked to.
Well, the proofreader was actually one of her former employees.
Oh, okay.
Because she was very good at writing, and it was that former employee that says, get rid of the fluff.
Yeah.
And just get to the meat and bones of how you got to where you are.
Yeah.
And that's the thing.
And it was good advice. It's a good read.
Yeah. Don't focus on all the positive stuff. It's just like social media today. We see all these people smiling and laughing and they've got such nice cars and this and that. When the reality is that many of them, it's all fake.
Right. It's curated lifestyles.
Exactly. Yeah. And then when reality finally sets in, I'm glad some of these influencers are doing well for themselves.
Sure.
But for how long?
Right.
Until that bubble breaks.
Yep.
Or how much suffering goes on behind the scenes.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
That the general public doesn't see.
Yep.
Right.
They only see the good stuff and not the work. If everyone would take off the facade and really record, very much like we're doing today. It's not a perfect podcast in any way, shape, or form. We're just here having fun and keeping it real.
Right.
Versus all this artificial stuff that's being thrown out there to the masses, which is like professional wrestling, scripted.
Right.
Now I'm going to get an angry phone call from WWE.
Yeah,
lawyers.
Yeah.
Right. No, this is completely unscripted. I mean, I don't even think we came in with an outline. We haven't done an outline because we're just trying to, like you said, have fun and talk about something and hopefully get other people to pick up a book or listen to a book or something also. Pick up a book. And that I kind of needed this project to push me in that direction also, because I had been stagnating on my reading over the last couple of years. And so it's been fun to jump back in and start reading and devouring content again.
Yeah. Go ahead.
And this is an easy read.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
You can if you just have the time to just sit down and read, you can knock it out within less than a week.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not that hard.
An avid reader could knock it out in an evening.
Probably.
Right.
Yeah.
But I am an incredibly slow
read.
reader. So.
Yeah. Well, and as I was listening to this and trying to learn from her and as I compared her to our students, we were working on that server management project, and there was failures everywhere. The dang stuff, the working with the equipment, legacy equipment, software that was open source but not easy to configure. So we had we worked on that for quite a while, and then when I said it's time to stop, just do these presentations, and we need to talk about this project, and I just went around the room and just pointed at different students in different pods. Okay, what'd you learn from this? And it was really nice to hear that they were like, hey, this is real world. This is technology. Nothing's going to work 100% right out of the box. We learned more from these failures, and some of them we solved, and others, are at a point where we need more time, but we don't have it at this point.
Yep.
And so it was really refreshing to hear them say that. And then, after hearing her, it's just like, oh, wow,
Right?
That is, they learned more from
Yes.
failing than they did from all of it working 100%. Because I was awake at 2 a.m. thinking, oh my gosh, they're not going to learn anything from this.
This is the IT world. You are going to spend 90% of your time troubleshooting something, even if you're building it to just stand up a new service. I mean, you're going to have a lot of troubleshooting just standing that up, let alone something that breaks that you need to figure out.
And you won't have all brand new equipment for every company that you work for.
Yeah, exactly.
You might have this legacy huge room sitting there that you have to, okay, now we're going to buy new, but we still need this database over here.
Right.
How are you going to do that?
Right.
Yeah.
Yep. Exactly. And so hopefully they have the tools now to know how to jump in and be like, even if I don't know what I'm doing, I have the tools to research it and know how to approach this problem. Well, I know, Lori, you need to get going. And so if we want to do any closing remarks or anything on the book, I want to say my favorite lesson throughout the whole book was that 3 weeks in the summer, where every summer, like the team would dread that 3 weeks, that move out season, but every year that's what helped them grow. That 3 week span gave them enough revenue where they could afford to do X, Y, and Z. And when she started to realize that people were taking other internships because they didn't want to be in charge of a group that was going out and dealing with this move out season, and then she started to rethink her approach to that, and she sacrificed revenue for the mental health of her people. I think that was my favorite decision in the whole book. I loved the 45 and that realization, but the realization that, you know what? The money that we're getting from this 3 week burst of work is not worth what it's doing to the morale and to the mental health of my staff, which had become her friends at that point. I mean, they were not just people that she was pushing out to do a job. They were actual relationships that she had, and she knew everybody. And so I think that was my favorite decision and my favorite part of the whole book.
Yeah, there are a lot of information in there in a lot of situations that those who are interested in either leadership roles or human resource management roles, there are a lot of nice examples for consideration. So that's something that really struck with me with regard to this book overall.
Yeah, my favorite story was Kayla.
Oh, okay.
No, not Kayla.
That was the last story, right?
I can't remember her name, where she actually formed that relationship with that elderly lady, and how the son was like, boy, she doesn't hardly talk to anybody. She won't talk to us. But she went there once every other week, and then it became once every week, and then even more. And she created that wonderful relationship. And then, like you said, they wanted her there when she was on her deathbed. She didn't quite make it. But then they asked her to come to the funeral and talk about the stories, because their mother didn't really talk to them about these things. But she was there, and she was able to create this connection. So she went to the funeral and told the stories that their mother said to her. So, that became, I thought that was a really cool story.
That is really cool.
Yeah.
And again, from a cleaning service,
Yes.
that relationship was developed.
Yep.
And so it's just amazing.
Right.
It's all about how you approach the situation and how you treat people. I mean,
How you treat people.
I just want to say before we go, I get to pick the next book.
Yep.
And I have picked C. Robert Cargill's Sea of Rust. And so we are going to be getting away from the nonfiction and jumping into a little bit of fiction. All I will say is the theme of it is robotics and AI.
Oh, boy.
And that's all we've got.
We did HR now.
Right?
We did HR, now we're going into the other spectrum.
Yep.
All right.
I read it once, but it's been 3-4 years since I've read it, and it was so fun. It's a good book. All right. Well, thanks for joining us. Yeah. We'll be more organized at some point in the future, but as of right now, as we were saying earlier, this is going to be a consistent work in progress. So we don't know what we're doing yet, but stay tuned, and hopefully you hear us next month. All right. Take care.